Welcome back, everybody, to another tying session. So last week, if you remember, or last week I did that streamer, or more of a traditional hair wing type streamer. Today I'm gonna kind of do another cone head, but a cone head, sort of an adaptation, but it's quite common in catalogs. You see it in other places, of the ever so popular woolly bugger, which I'm sure for anybody who's tied trout flies or done any kind of fly fishing for trout is quite familiar with the name of the woolly bugger. I mean, it's probably one of the more commonly tied flies out there, and various versions of it, and this is one of those. So I'll show you the regular. This would be more of a standard version, standard woolly bugger. Pretty simple construction. Like I say, just marabou, a little bit of flash, with a chenille body and a rib of a saddle. Traditionally, I think it goes on these is more of a softer saddle hackle. The version today is a cone head version, and you see these out there, certainly in supply houses or whatever, where you can buy flies. These cone heads, or another version would be a bead head, which is quite popular. And this particular one that I do is I do it in a few different colors, but today it would be black, which is more of probably the traditional color. It's a crystal chenille woolly bugger. So it's a crystal chenille body, and instead of regular hackle, I use Schlappen hackle. And the obvious reasons are, you can tell by, I mean, this fly is certainly not a pretty fly, but it's not meant to be. It's meant to be a fly with a lot of movement in the water, which is why we got the marabou, and then the Schlappen adds to that. And then I add a few rubber legs on the side there, and I'll get into those when I get to the time what they are. But again, for purposes of movement, the cone is instead of a brass cone, which I've used for a long time, I switched these over now to tungsten cones, and I match them, or I don't match them, but I use various colors of tungsten cones depending on the color of the fly I'm doing. So these, I tie these in black, and most commonly black, brown, olive, and white as well, which from a beadhead woolly bugger point of view, the white seems to be quite popular up north as well, according to some of the feedback I'm after getting over the last couple of years. And as I did with the other videos, I'll post them not only on the channel, but I've posted them also on my website now. So there's a section on the website called Fly Tying Tutorials, and each tutorial I do will be posted there, along with the pattern description, and then the links from the pattern description, the materials in it will be linked to the materials on the website. Now, I haven't done it for all the ones. I think there's one there right now I did yesterday, but as I get time to get to it, I'll certainly include them in all the patterns I do as we move forward. So like I say, if you want the materials then to go along with it, for the most part, if I carry it, then it'll be linked to the it'll be linked in the pattern description. And if I don't currently carry the materials, I will certainly carry going forward. That's my intention anyway. Okay, so let's kind of get going. So the hook that I use for this particular pattern, we'll stick with, is a TMC 300. I think the MFC 7030 is an equivalent fly in their brand. I believe it's a 6X long, if I'm not mistaken, or 5X, I can't remember. Anyway, that's the hook here. So it's certainly a long shank hook. Okay, the thread I'm using is a UTC 140, if I can find it here. There we go, in black. Again, heavy thread. This fly, like I said, is not difficult to tie. And like I said, you don't have to be really, you can be a bit lenient in terms, it's not a delicate fly to tie by no means. The cone is a is a tungsten cone. As I said before, if I can find the tungsten cones, sorry. There we go. As you can tell, I keep my cones in these plastic containers again. Some people are interested in how I store some of my materials. It's always interesting to see how people store their materials for anybody that's doing a fair bit of tying and gathers up a lot of different materials. It's a challenge to find storage solutions that are effective and don't take up a whole lot of room. For me, these particular canisters work well. I've been using them for many years. I can't even remember where I got these, but I think you can kind of get them at most of the craft stores. So cone in this case is, like I said, is a tungsten, and on that size of hook, I'm using a size large, and it's a black nickel. Put this aside without wiping out everything on my desk. Again, we just thread the cone. Now, on some of the other, or on one of the other videos, I think it was the bunny muddler, the Conehead bunny muddler, where I mounted the cone and I used a dubbing ball, drove it up against the cone, and then inserted or just poured a drop of cement or some other super glue down into the eye, which set the or down into the cone, which set the cone. This particular one I don't bother, and I'll show you why. We lay our thread base in. As I said before, I use weight on this fly, so I usually wrap my thread base. I usually wrap my lead over my thread base. The lead on this one I use is a 25 thou. So that's the kind of larger spool lead that I currently have here. Bought it this way just again for being economical. Just tear off a generous portion of lead. Now when you wrap this in, I don't want to wrap too far up, and I'll show you why in a second, but kind of leave myself a bit of room at the bin. I'll show you why. I'm not sure how many wraps. A good generous amount of wraps for sure. There we go. So you see what I've done there then? I took the lead, and you can do that. You can wrap that lead on a bear shank and then wrap the thread over it. I'm sure it probably wouldn't make that much difference. It just holds the lead a bit better when it's wrapped on a thread base. So I took the lead and I pushed it up against the cone, and I kind of centered the cone, as you can tell. So the cone is, you know, it's solid, but it's not locked in there with super glue or anything. And then I cover this with thread. And that's partly the reason for the UTC 140. It's a flatter, wider thread. So it really helps cover the base of that lead. Now you can coat that as well with a super glue or whatever you want. It's your preference. I could have added more lead here now in hindsight, but really not going to make a whole lot of difference. Okay. So what I use for the tail, again, is marabou. Now you can buy marabou, just the regular blood quills, or you can buy it what's called woolly blugger marabou. Some people don't really have a whole lot of preference. This is a piece that I had for quite a while, and the reason I like it, you can almost tell by looking at it here, the fibers are not quite as wispy as some of the blood quills you get, which is typically, you know, it's sort of denser or thicker. Now it's been picked through, so there's not a lot left in here. That's really, really, you know, really good, but I'm sure I'll get a couple of pieces out of it. And like I said, that's typically how the woolly blugger or marabou comes, sort of as a distinction between that and the regular marabou. So let me see if I can find a couple of pieces in here. I'm after using quite a bit of this already, so there's probably not a whole lot left there. That'll do the trick. Yeah, a couple pieces right here. I'll show you now when I get these out. Kind of what I'm talking about. About where we turn them up. Okay. So you can see that's one. That's the second one. Now on these size flies, on a number 4, like I got in here, I typically use 2 quills, which is traditionally how I, for the most part, unless you're tying in really small sizes, I'd recommend the 2 quills to kind of give you the, because once this gets wet, like I said, it reduces down pretty good in size. So I typically tie these together. I tie them tail the length of the hook, so from say the eye to the opposite the point, and then I come in here. Now the way I do this, you know, I'm measuring. This is roughly where I'm going to tie down. You can see the lead is back a ways, so I want to cover this section between the lead and where I'm tying down the quill. So I don't want to cut the quill off too far up. I want to be able to tie down a lot of this stuff, right? And it fills in that gap, basically, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Just evens out the body a little better. There we go. And that's it. So instead of having that huge transition up to the lead, you got a relatively even body. Now for the tail, again, as I do with most all these marabou tails, I put some kind of a flash material. You can use crystal flash if you want. I happen to use this, and you see me use this if you watch the other videos. This Acrylex is called. I kind of like it, but again, it's you can use Flash-A-Boo or crystal flash. I'm sure it's not going to matter. So I tie a piece on one side, and a piece on the other. Cut these off slightly longer than the tail. That's it. Okay, so next goes the Hackle. Unlike, and again, maybe in a future video I'll just tie a standard woolly bugger, but there's a lot of them out there. Typically the woolly buggers are tied in at the head, wrapped forward, and then there's a wire that holds down the Hackle. That's the most common way I've seen it done. In this one, I do it slightly a bit different. I start the tail off at the beginning, or opposite the point of the hook. Now, in this Schlappen, as you probably remember me saying before, if you watch the other videos again, you want fairly long Schlappen, particularly for these size of flies, as you can well imagine. Long and webby. This is not too bad. This will work. And you want to be able to get one, like I said, so you're ending up, you want to be able to utilize some of this down here in the bottom. Again, the stems down here are fairly thick, but it really is not going to make a whole lot of difference. Like I said, they are flexible. They won't crack on you. So we tie this in. Tie this in by the tip. That's it. Kind of lift that aside. The body on this one is a crystal chenille, in black in this case. It's a medium, I believe, is what I use on most all these flies. Medium seems to be quite sufficient. Again, if you're tying smaller patterns, then you might want to drop a size. But on this particular one, where it's such a relatively big pattern, size 2 or 4 hooks, medium is fine. So you tie your crystal chenille in. Catch the point of it. There we go. Okay, And again, there's nothing fancy about this, just wrap it in. I just pull back a little bit, the fibers, sort of, just so it's not trapping itself there, but this is, typically it's not too bad. You tie this right up to the, basically right up to the back of the cone. Leave yourself a little bit of room there. I'll show you why in a second. Okay, so save that piece. Kind of just wrap this down. Okay, now you wrap your Schlappen in. Try to keep this as best you can. Kind of tease it forward. And you want to kind of end up so you're utilizing the majority of this Schlappen feather right up to the back of the stem, as I said before. And like I say, it gets kind of messy. Almost there now, but look at it. See that? Tie that down. There we go. So I got a decent profile to it. And again, utilizing a bit of that fuzzy material at the back. Now on this one, you could leave it like this and tie off, and I'm sure it'll be fine in terms of fish catching ability. But I add a few rubber legs on this, and what I'm using is, if you can see this, the camera picks it up, but it's a silly legs. It's black with some red flakes, it's called, in it. I kind of like it instead of just a solid black. And it comes like I've probably seen on some of the other videos. And you just kind of tear off what you want. And if you can, kind of keep it together, you know, right, instead of single strands. So the way I do this one, again, nothing too crazy. I just I almost do like an overhand knot into it, and that's it. And that's it. So they kind of just fall down, sort of down, not completely underneath, more off to the side. Let's see if I got a clip here. Okay. I used a clip here now to keep this out of the way, like that. So this is all tied down. You can see it, I mean, it's got a fairly big ball here. So for a while I used to, I try to keep this minimum, and then I'd kind of tie off behind the cone as is. I kind of I kind of got away from that. I didn't really like it, and I wasn't putting enough wraps in there that I felt that would really hold everything together. So kind of burying it wraps, it kind of makes it look a little bit messy, so I figured best thing to do would be to cover this area with another wrap or two of chenille just to finish it off. That's it. Wraps behind the cone. Clip off your crystal chenille. Just bury the ends in behind the cone and whip finish. You won't need to apply any glue or anything like that in here. That's it. And left now is just to trim these legs roughly around half the length of the tail. Here.